One, start streaming. I'll let you know when we're live. We're live.
Hey there, everyone. This is Paul from Flexera. Thanks for joining me this afternoon. I am going to be talking about how to have hard conversations with your team as a leader. And I know for me, through my career, it's been about 2 decades in leadership now. Especially early on in my career, some of those conversations when you needed to deal with things where there was significant difference in alignment and direction of where people wanted to go and where the business was going. I found those like really, really hard, and situations where maybe performance isn't quite going the way we want to. Having those sensitive conversations, it was always like such a deep challenge, and I've learned a lot through the years. And what I want to do today is share with you the foundation for having those kind of hard conversations in a really constructive way. And then I'm going to talk about 5 techniques to kind of flow from that foundation to help you with these conversations. So, the topic is really important because in any endeavor, anything significant, and particularly with the complexity of IT that we're in, with so many different moving parts and complexity, there's going to be a lot of difference between people's desires, expectations, their perceptions, their beliefs on the direction we should be going. And there's also going to be lots of times when things aren't working exactly the way we'd like. And as a leader, we need to be able to have those discussions in those situations. If we ignore them, we kind of get stagnation. We get people not really aligned, and we don't really meet the results we're trying to achieve for our customers and our business. On the other hand, if we have those conversations in the wrong way, it can be quite damaging, and there can be a real impact on morale of people that's quite significant if we don't really do these conversations with the right spirit. And as a leader, when you look at it and you step back, the best possible outcome of your leadership is a situation where everyone in your team is engaged, they're all stepping up, they're letting their talents shine out, they're taking risks, they're collaborating, they're taking ownership of things. And that just doesn't happen automatically. You need intention to help foster that kind of culture. And it's those hard moments and the conversations we have in them that are so crucial in trying to foster that kind of culture. So I'll start with a quick story, and then I'll share with you, like I said, that foundation and the 5 things. I remember once I had to deal with a situation with someone in my team that was having a negative impact on the broader team in different kind of ways. And so I needed to have some kind of conversation around this, but it felt like it was going to be a sensitive conversation, and I wanted to do it in the right way. We ended up having a discussion talking about really the person and how they were going and their interests and their aspirations. So in this conversation, it was a lot about exploring where the person wanted to go, what their vision of success was, what it would be like if everything was perfect, and what they're really striving for. And then also what things were holding back from that today and what were they struggling with. And they shared various frustrations with me. And some of those things I was actually kind of like a contributor to. And it was really a good opportunity because I got to kind of apologize for that and kind of like thank the person for that feedback, because there's things I could change to kind of help with the overall situation. And then just when it got to the point when I was going to then start sharing about the items about the impact on the team, the person themselves actually volunteered that from their own accord. They kind of said, I've sort of been doing X, Y, and Z, and it has this kind of impact, and I know it's not ideal. And we just had a really great discussion through that. I said, do you mind if we talk through it? Can I ask some questions to help us navigate through it? We had a wonderful conversation, and at the end, the person actually turned to me and said, thank you for that conversation. And they said, this was actually one of the best conversations I've had in my life, actually. And it was like really, really helpful. And that really touched me and moved me. But then, thinking about it, why did we have that reaction? Why did I get that response out of the conversation? And the answer is because that entire conversation, I was holding the value of that person to the fullest degree. I was genuinely listening to them. I wasn't jumping to conclusions. I also wasn't letting any of the behavior that the person had been doing diminish in any way that sense of valuing them. And in short, I was being a loving leader. And that is the crucial foundation to having hard conversations, is to love your team, or in more specifically in this context, to love the person that you're having the conversation with. And what I mean by that is to hold that value of the person super high, to the same level of value you know as far as your own self-worth goes as a person, and to strive to just align everything with that, everything you say, everything you do, every decision you make, and that really is the foundation. And then from that foundation, you know, if you approach conversations like that, even if you don't get the right words and you stumble over what you're saying and you're not really that polished in terms of how you can hold a meeting, it really doesn't matter. You know, you're going to find the right things to say. And if you make mistakes, you can kind of just come back and say, you know, sorry, I didn't really probably phrase that properly. I'm trying to say this, and you can navigate your way through it, and it's all going to be fine. Whereas if on the other hand, you're trying to have a conversation where you're focused on just getting a certain result and you're focused on trying to just use the right techniques to get the result from the person you want, that's never going to have impact. You know, people know when you're genuine and when you're really valuing them. And so it's not just about, you know, applying certain techniques. It truly is about valuing the person. But then, like I said, from that foundation, there are 5 things I want to share today to really keep in mind with having a hard conversation. The first one, above all the others, is to listen. So often when we go into a conversation, just say around performance, we kind of tend to get focused on how am I going to have that conversation? What should I say? What shouldn't I say? How's what I say going to be received? But you know what we're doing? We're really focusing on ourselves and really looking inward about what's going to be the impact to me of this conversation. Whereas what we really need to do is say, let's have the focus on the other person. Let's go in and listen and genuinely be attentive to what someone is saying. So that's number 1, to be listening. Number 2 is to have an open mind, to not jump to conclusions about either someone's motivation or what might have been behind a situation. And by all means to make observations about things, but to really just keep an open mind about what may, what's been happening, and really listen to the person. So it kind of goes hand in hand with the first one. And you know, the times when people feel judged or blamed is when someone has jumped to a conclusion about things. And you know, here's the thing: even if you don't say it, if you're actually jumping to a conclusion in your mind about someone in a conversation, they really know it. Like, they can sense it even if you don't say it. So it has to be a genuine openness to listen to the other person. Number 3 is being clear with observations that you're making, and also being clear with affirming what you're hearing from the other person. So let's say, for instance, you were talking about a situation where someone, their delivery of results hasn't been to the level that you're expecting in terms of quality or time frame or something like that. It's fine to kind of observe that, to say, you know, I've noticed that with these deliveries, they're taking longer than I may have expected. Let's have a conversation through that. And that's an observation. And the spirit of it is that both you and the person are together on the same side of the table, talking about something together. And in this situation, it happens to be the person's performance, but it's not really a discussion about the person. It's a discussion together about that performance. So you have that discussion, and then the person might say, you know, that's true, I've been missing this. I get a lot of interruptions from all these other things, and that's a real challenge. And it's important to make sure that you really do hear what people say, and sometimes you can do that by reaffirming back what you've heard. So you may say, you know, thanks for sharing that, and I can appreciate that. I know what it's like to get interrupted, and I know we've got a lot of those things. And you're just affirming that you've really listened to what the person's saying. And that also doesn't mean, like, you know, affirming what someone says doesn't mean that you're necessarily saying that it's fine. Like, it's kind of like, okay, we've had a discussion and we hear that, but you can still say in that example, well, going forward, you know, we do need to find a path where we get the stuff delivered when we're expecting. Let's work together to figure out what that looks like. You know, what ideas have you got? How can I help? So you can kind of continue in that way. So that's number 3, is just being clear with observations and reflecting things back. Number 4 would be honesty and humility. And this kind of an example, this would come in is if you've got a big change. So the company's going to do something drastically different to before, and it's going to upend everything that people have been working on. That kind of situation's hard. People feel the pain of that kind of change. And it's important to be honest in that situation. If you try and pretend that it's kind of not as significant as it is, and you're trying to put some kind of spin on it, it really doesn't help, and it actually makes things worse. Whereas you can say, I know this change is really hard. I feel it myself, and I know it's going to impact you like immensely, and it's certainly not ideal that we chop and change like significantly like that. But at the same time, I also know that we kind of have to do this for these reasons for the business, and I think we need to go through it. So when you're authentic and honest, it's a lot more relatable, and you can really have good connections with people. And if you don't agree with something, let's say there's a decision that's made and you don't think it's the right thing, I think it's important to be honest about that as well. Like, it's important to say in that instance, I probably would have personally chosen a different path here. But having said that, I'm not in the shoes of the person making this call, and they've got a lot of things to deal with, but I think I may have suggested we go a different path. But having said that, I also know we need to be aligned as a team. And if this is the path we're taking as a company, well, then I'm on board, and I'd like to ask you to all be on board as well. So that's like an example of, again, being honest and humble in admitting that you don't really know 100% what the right path is, and just being clear about where you stand. And then the final one is number 5 is to be constructive. And that really is saying to focus the discussions on the desired end result and the desired success of not just the person or not just the company, it's the desired success of the company, of the team, of the person, of our customers, and to really be constructively trying to have every conversation move towards the benefit of all of those people. And there's a risk when you focus on one group or one person at the expense of the others. If you really focus on the success of the company, but not so much on the people working there, you end up becoming an oppressive kind of leader that has like a negative impact on people. On the other hand, if you end up focusing completely on the needs of your team, but not really holding high importance to the needs of the company, well, then you might end up with a nice environment to work in, but you're not going to have a team that's thriving and really meeting the goals of the mission that we've got. Whereas if all those things together are held in a balance, and everything you do is trying to work towards being constructive to those things, your conversations will end up having a constructive effect. So in summary, there's really, these hard conversations don't have to be as hard and as challenging as they seem like they may be on the surface. And actually, I've got a question coming in. The question is, what if someone has a particularly negative reaction? And that is a great question. And over the years, I've experienced situations where there's been quite a negative reaction to a situation or a conversation. In those cases, it's super important to value that person, just like I'm describing. You need to value them, and you need to not react in a way that's kind of like going to make things destructive. Often in those kind of situations, it's a matter of pausing, truly listening to what the person's saying, and realizing that you don't have to go through and complete the whole conversation right then and there. You may say, hey, let's pause for now. I hear what you're saying. Let me reflect on that. Let's pause on it and let's come back tomorrow, especially if there's a lot of emotion in it. Like, it might be worth just pausing and coming back. And I think it's also important to, like I said, make sure you've listened and heard what the person's saying. Make sure you're reaffirming that, and then and objectively kind of describing kind of where you're coming from and saying, let's see if we can find a way together to look at this. But it could be at a later date. But great question. And the thing is, these conversations, like I said, don't have to be as hard or scary as they seem. And if you do intentionally hold the value of the other person like really high, if you're genuinely listening, if you're there trying to constructively help in that honest and humble way, you'll end up with a good experience no matter how challenging the situation is. And you may end up finding that these conversations that seem so hard and scary actually become moments of real transformative effect, and some of the most rewarding situations you'll actually experience as a leader. So thanks. That's all I had to share today. Please, if subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow along to keep on top of the different presentations we'll be coming up with, and the different Q&As and things like that. And thank you for attending today, and thank you for listening. Have a great afternoon. Bye.